Hi, everybody. Melissa Urban here, Whole30 co-founder and CEO. I am here with Lorenzo Alexander, who is going to talk about his Whole30 experience and experiences. Lorenzo, it's wonderful to meet you. Why don't you introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, well, I'm a 15-year NFL vet. Had the privilege to play for five different organizations. I grew up in the Bay Area, went to the University of Berkeley. And since, that whole experience, I have a wife of 17 years. We have four children, and we currently reside in the Phoenix area. And my fitness journey, my health journey has been really unique in the experience of football, right? And so when I was in high school and even in the NFL, my biggest, I was at 315. And by the end of it, I was at 235. And so I've had a very unique career from the standpoint of having to do this transformation. And I think doing that transformation, I got introduced to Whole30. And so it's been a real cool experience just to learn about my body, my health, and the tools around it. And really, at the end of the day, having the right perspective. And so it's really been a real key in my life, and it continues to be as I retire from the NFL.
I'm excited to talk to you. We don't have a lot of professional athletes. We've had some actually. Justin Turner, baseball player, did the Whole30 and got a lot of media about it. But I've been excited to talk to you as an NFL player. Tell me about your first Whole30. When did you do it? How did you first hear about it? And what was happening in your life at that point that made you want to start the program?
Well, I think when did we first hear about it? I think I was in Buffalo, so it was actually towards the end of my career.
Yep.
I got introduced to it. My wife's friend Jill, who was one of my teammates' wives, she's Jill Williams, had been doing it, and she told my wife about it. And my wife knows that when I do something or commit to something, I'm pretty locked in. And so she mentioned it. These are the things that we're trying to do. And so I said, yeah, cool, I'll do it with you. And really love that. So that had to be about 2017, between 2016 and 2017 season that we did it for the first time. And just love the experience, how my body felt. It wasn't easy, obviously, when you go through and you're taking things away from your diet that you're used to eating. So from a mental perspective, but after you get through that week or so, and one thing I had to find is just having a regimen schedule too helped, but really just enjoyed the entire process.
So you did your first Whole30 while you were playing for the Bills.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah. So I mean, in the
Ah,
off season, I didn't do it
yeah,
during the season.
totally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That'd have been a little bit too hard mentally, being sore and then also trying to be
Oh, yeah.
disciplined and locked in. But typically what I found, even as I got older, is really in that off season right after I wanted to detox, kind of reset, and really start anew after every season. I always had this mindset of always staying in shape and always trying to find different things. And after a football season, right? When you feel bad, and I think this is in general, you tend to eat bad, eat worse, or you justify things. Oh, I just played a game. I can eat whatever. And so after the end of a season, football players, really athletes in general, your body's really beat up. And
Yeah.
so this was really a good time to kind of get away from a lot of that processed food, get away from the sugar, and just allow my body to start healing itself and not having to try to figure out how to process all this junk that was in my body and really focus on getting healthy. And so that was just the real cool part about it. And that's why I started implementing it in most of my off seasons after that.
That's so cool. What were the results of your first Whole30? What were you expecting from the program or hoping for? And then did you get any results that were unexpected?
Um, I think the biggest thing, one of my things that I just always want to have a good lean composition. And so I typically eat pretty I say healthy, but with intentionality,
Yeah.
right? And as far as what I'm putting in my body, but you start to realize or you forget that a lot of stuff that's made today is much differently than when we grew up and then even when our parents grew up, right? And especially when you think about the additive of sugar into everything. And you
Yeah.
start, so one of the things that I think that I got out of it that I didn't realize just how much sugar and certain stuff is in the back. So I became more aware of the labeling and
Yeah.
what is in this and how much of it is. And so even though, yeah, I think I'm eating something good, let me actually read the label and see what's in it to be a little bit more informed. And then I can make a more informed choice, right? Some things you can't get away from. Also, just learning how to figure out other options, different options, I thought was really cool. And for me, I've always been this bigger guy in my career, in life. And so, like I told you, I was 315. And so I was always the biggest kid. And so one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and this is just my personal thing, I don't think Whole30 is about this, but one of the things is just getting lean enough so I can see my abs, right? And so when you start eating in a certain way where you're taking the sugar out, you're taking all of the calories you don't necessarily realize that you're drinking or eating, you're able to do that from my perspective in an easier fashion because you're eating the same, but you're eating cleaner and you're also in your caloric deficit, and that's something completely different. But when you eat like that, you don't have all these additional calories that sometimes that you're unaware of.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine too, after a season, you probably feel pretty inflamed. I would imagine that your joints and your tendons and your ligaments, you said your
Oh, for
body was
sure.
pretty banged up. Did you notice Whole30 helping to reduce that inflammation as well, which can actually lead to, some visible body changes?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I've noticed that the older I've gotten. So like this last time, I think I've probably felt that the most as far as, I'm over 40 and, you play NFL and I have a 50-year-old in the house that's young. He's on the other end of the spectrum and like, Dad, I don't have to go to sleep. I don't have to do this. I was like, yeah, because you're 15 right
Yeah.
now, right? And so I'm on the other end of that. So as I've gotten older and gotten further away from the game, I've still tried to work out, but again, your body just ages and it handles things differently. And I know as soon as I went on the Whole30 this past time, I was less inflamed. My joints didn't hurt as much after a workout. And so, obviously you want to work out, but 80% of how you feel and how you move and the gains that you see comes from how you eat and what you put in your body, right? And we always use that analogy of a car, right? So if you put that 87 fuel in your car, your car, it's gonna run, but over the course of time, it's gonna sound a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Versus having that high 90, 93, which is a lot more expensive, right? Just like our food, but over the course of time, right, you have less things that you have to worry about coming up because you just have a better quality of fuel that's running through your body. So your body can just be more efficient. So I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely, but definitely as I got older.
A lot of people also talk about Whole30 improving energy and just having steadier energy throughout the day, which certainly helps. Sleeping
Yeah.
better. I don't know if you noticed any changes in your sleep, but that can
Yeah,
also,
I've
all of
always
these are
slept pretty
synergistic.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always felt pretty good, but the energy levels I would definitely say is true because you don't have to deal with the spikes of your blood sugar going up and down. Also for me, my family, diabetes runs in our family, right? And so being able to control that sugar intake helps immensely. And it's kind of a caveat. I know it's about me, but I also challenged my mom to do it this time, and she is diabetic.
Yeah.
And she saw a significant change in her just blood sugar levels and checking that every day. And so I definitely wanted, because it's helped her out a lot. So I wanted to make sure I get that in. So if you're diabetic, it's just a great way because you learn how to eat good food, healthy food that tastes well, but then you're also obviously helping yourself from if you have a condition like diabetes.
That's cool that you brought your mom on board. We hear that quite a bit with people who bring their parents or even grandparents on board. How did you support your mom during her first Whole30? And then what kind of support do you ask for from your family when the rest of your family, maybe your wife or kids, aren't doing it with you?
Well, for my mom, just helping her with the meal plan. And when she's going to the grocery store, she can look up things that are Whole30 compliant or find like different options. Because if you don't eat a certain type of way, you typically just fall into your normal categories. You're like, man, I don't know what to do. I think when you're doing things like this initially, I think keeping things simple, right? Call it in football, we call it kiss it, keep it simple, stupid,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to overcomplicate it, but eating very similar meals, even though I know it gets mundane, but once you kind of figure out how to cook during this process, then you can start expanding a little bit. So just trying to help her with that. And then I would say from my perspective, again, it's unique because I've always had to do things different than my family because I was a professional athlete. And so they could be eating McDonald's or whatever, and I'm like, I'm gonna pass on that, and I'm gonna wait till we get home, right?
Yeah.
So I don't need that same type of support because I've had to do it a long time, kind of doing different things anyway because of the uniqueness of my career and profession for a long time. But what I have tried to challenge, especially because I have young athletes in the house, is try to get them to start eating healthier And so I try to become just a role model more for them than needing their support. And then I would say the biggest thing when that comes with that is obviously cooking. So my wife has done an excellent job of getting on board and making those type of meals, especially for the family at dinner when we're all coming together. So I don't have to, figure out something else to eat. She'll make stuff that's Whole30 compliant, and the kids, a lot of times, if you don't tell them nothing, they don't even realize, oh, this is good. Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't have XXX. Oh, okay. So it's been a good, I think, learning experience from that aspect as well.
That's such a good point. I often say if you're cooking from any of our recipes, or even if you're just throwing whole ingredients together, cooking them, tying them together with the dressing or sauce, if you had people over for dinner and you fed this to them, they would not think that this was diet food. They wouldn't think anything odd about it at all.
Right.
It's just delicious, whole, nutrient dense food. And I think the idea
Right.
of keeping it simple is so important. You don't have to cook fancy recipes every single night. What are
Right.
one or two of your go-to Whole30 meals?
Oh man. Well, I'm really simple. So I mean, I like egg whites and then having like a protein with it, and then and then I have my coffee, and so that's kind of my thing in the mornings. If I can keep it like that, keep it really simple.
Yeah.
I love. And then my daughter was making this buffalo chicken with cauliflower rice,
Hmm.
which was really good as well. We started making that together as well. So those are probably two of the things that I like that are really simple, really easy to make and put together in a pretty short time.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. Meal prep is so important on the Whole30, but I think you can easily, especially if you're not used to cooking, people can get easily overwhelmed. So I love the idea of keeping it simple. Just pick a protein, pick a veggie side, add some fruit once in a while, add some healthy fats, either cooking or on the side. And that's all you really need to do to get through the Whole30. I'm curious with this last Whole30, which you started in June. Because you've done so many, was it easier to jump back into it? Did you experience any of those typical sort of hangover effects in your first week, or did you sort of like skip that phase because you're so experienced?
Yeah, you tend to skip the phase of because I know what to expect. And sometimes that can be a double-edged sword. If you know what to expect, sometimes you kind of procrastinate because you don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like I hope I don't have to go through that again.
Yeah.
But I was just at a phase where I wanted to do it and wanted to start it. And my wife wanted to do it again. And then I was talking to Dave, one of our good friends who's actually family for me, and said, "Hey, man, I actually need to do this because I want to get something to jumpstart me in terms of getting back into my groove in my fitness journey." Because, like I said, again, I work out pretty consistently. That's part of my routine.
Yeah.
The food portion is so important. It's probably more important than anything else you do. And so it was just it was time to do it. I think the only things that I typically run into is like that first week where we're all have our routine and our tendencies. And so I think I was talking to Dave, like, yeah, the first time I went over to this golf place, I normally grab like these mints that have sugar, candy mints, and you just, oh man, pop it in. You're like, oh, you start, oh, I can't have this. So it's like those things that happen and you give yourself grace and then you move on, right? I don't
Yeah.
let a meal or me making a mistake or failure, like, oh, well, I'm done with the whole thing now. You just start from wherever you're at and just continue to move forward. And so
Yeah.
even when you have to travel, sometimes you forget, you don't plan properly and it may not be 100%. You just try to find as best as possible, just keep it moving and just obviously be ready for the next time. And so that's kind of how I approached it this time. And I did have a couple of things in there, but once you get into the groove and you start, okay, now I got to prep and plan, then you're much better off.
Yeah, I often tell people your only job on the Whole30 is to put Whole30 food in your mouth. That's it. It doesn't have to be the perfect balanced meal. You don't have to include
Right.
something green with every single meal. If I'm traveling and I haven't prepared enough or I encounter delays, I might just have like an RX bar and a meat stick. And it's not ideal, but
Right.
you're eating, you're fueling yourself with Whole30 foods, like you're learning for next time. And I think that's so important. And I think those lessons of planning, preparing, reading labels stay with you long after your Whole30 is over. Those become a habit, I think, as you've
Yeah, for
mentioned.
sure. For sure. And especially on the traveling tip, I think a lot of airports now too are doing a lot better job. I think people overall is providing those healthy options. Now
Yeah.
it's going to be sitting next to something that looks better and is normally something that you want to grab. So you have to make that mental check-in of what you want to do. But whether it's a hard-boiled egg or, some type of alternative protein that you can have really is in there. They have this farmer's fridge that's pretty cool now too, that you can get on and find some stuff that's Whole30 compliant as well. So it's a lot of things out there. You just have to kind of look on your phone and not go through the easiest thing. Like I see that, I'm gonna grab it. If you just kind of Google, look it up, you can typically find something that's compliant as well.
Yeah, it is much easier traveling, that's for sure. I love seeing like Chomps snack sticks in my local airport. So
Yeah.
I travel a lot too, and I think that's really, really helpful. I'm curious, as someone who, of course, spent many years as a professional athlete, 15 years in the NFL, and now someone who obviously continues to work out and, take care of your body and you're very active. I believe you own a Pilates studio right now. Is that
Yeah,
true?
well, I used to own one. We sold it. We owned it when I played for Washington, but I'm still in the fitness industry. I actually
Yeah,
train kids now. So we have a gym here locally in Phoenix, and then do some position training. So
yeah. So I'm curious, did you have to adapt your Whole30 meal planning to fuel your activities? Are you purposefully adding more protein? Are you purposefully adding more carbohydrates? Are you eating more often? Did you have to tweak it at all?
yeah, I mean, it really all comes down to your goals and what you're trying to do, right? And you talk about caloric intake and all those other things that kind of go into what type of food that you're eating. I did not. I typically just had to go up in protein is the main thing.
Mhm.
I'll add a little bit of carbohydrates in there. That typically, if I lower that, doesn't impact me versus someone else. And so I would say if, as you're going through this, you have to figure out what works for your body. Obviously, I've been in a space where I've had to be very in tune with my body over the course of the years of being a professional athlete. So I found what has worked for me. And typically when I go up in protein, lower in carbs, and I'm eating a good caloric base for the energy source, the energy that I'm outputting, I'm pretty good. Where some people have to have those carbs in order to operate, or they kind of crash altogether. So I would say figure out what your goals are, get with your trainer, right? Are you trying to cut? Are you trying to maintain? Are you trying to build muscle? And then go from there as far as adding the whole foods to whatever caloric intake that you are trying to do. And if you partner those two things together, you're going to see great results as far as your health journey and how you feel and how you get around and just your quality of life as you continue to move forward. And I think once you see how I think sometimes people don't realize how bad you feel, right? We've normalized feeling a certain type of way and being inflamed. Like this is what it's going to be. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think
Yeah,
when you add the food input into the working out, you'll actually see how much better you'll feel, and that's what you fall in love with. Just like my mom, right? She's like, man, I've fallen in love with how I feel, especially with my blood sugar, understanding with how serious diabetes can become. And so
yeah,
she's like, oh, I like this. I like this feeling. And she's actually like, I'm not even working out a lot, but I just feel better.
yeah.
And so I think that's what the goal is, right? I want to have a high quality of life and feeling good so I can be there for the people around me in my life at the high level every time I see them.
Absolutely. I talk about Whole30 almost unlocking this new level of normal. You're walking around, you're tired all the time. Maybe you're not sleeping as well. Maybe your joints are a little achy. Maybe your digestion is off, but you kind of don't realize it because that's just your baseline. That's just your normal. And then
Right,
you do a Whole30 and you realize this is as good as I can feel. I can walk around now feeling like this. And
right.
that becomes your litmus test for like, okay, this is how good I want to feel from now on.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what people fall in love with, and then you start adopting the Whole30, right? You may not do it all the time, but that's going to be the majority of how you eat. And that's what I do now, right? Monday through Friday, weekends we may go out on a date night or the kids are doing something, and so we may go off of it a little bit, but the majority of the time I'm trying to stay within that fits, right there. And there's a lot of freedom in that fits. I think people have issues with boundaries, but within those boundaries, you have a lot of freedom, and those boundaries are set up to protect you, right, from the things that we're talking about of this being normalized and being in pain that food can create for you if you're eating the wrong thing. So,
Yeah.
um, that's the way I like to think about it in a lot of ways. And you get a lot of freedom. And on the back end, you get the benefit from it because you're around longer, quality of life. Like I said, I have a 15-year-old, I'm 42. I can still get out there and run around with them. And I want to be able to do that when I'm 50, 60, having grandbabies. I still want to have an active life. And so I want to be proactive in making sure that I can maximize whatever that looks like for me in those ages of my career.
I think that's so smart. When you're doing the whole 30 and you kind of have achieved that new level of normal. You mentioned the boundaries, but the boundaries are freeing. When you do the whole 30, you figure out the foods that do and do not work well in your
Right.
unique system. And some of the stuff that might be healthy for one person doesn't feel great in your body and vice versa. Once
Right.
you know that, then you're like, I can eat anything I want. If I'm willing to accept the consequences, I
Right.
know how this food is going to impact me and I'm going
Yep.
to enjoy it. And if I don't want those consequences, I have all of these foods over here that I can put into a meal plan and I'll be
Mhm.
satisfied and they're delicious and it's going to keep me feeling my best. And I think that's
Exactly.
a lot of the freedom of the whole 30.
Right.
I'm curious, you talked about, of course, doing Whole30 during your off season. It's never anything we recommend if you've got, like, if you're on season, if you've got an A-level race coming up, obviously, because there are a lot of bodily changes that are happening and it can be stressful. Would you recommend that younger athletes, I'm talking about people who are just starting maybe their NFL careers or are in college and hoping to get into the NFL, would the Whole30 be something good to try in the off season and maybe even give them some kind of competitive advantage?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely think anything you can do to understand your body and learn how it responds to different foods and you'll see the different gains once you have an idea. I think a lot of times we just eat, especially athletes, you just kind of go through the motions. And I would say because the whole 30 diet isn't that it's not that restrictive at all. It's not like saying, hey, you need to eat 1,000 calories a day. Like it's just this crazy binge type diet. So and I know we want to stay away from it, but like I said, for me as a parent of a high school athlete and seeing how he would like to eat and what I know how he needs to eat, I would say even in high school, because you want to build those foundational principles while you're around them so you can help them kind of figure that what that looks like. And so when they go to college or they get away from you, they have an idea of how they should be eating. Now they make their own choices, but you've done it already as a parent. So that's just another aspect of parenting that I've kind of adopted. And so I would say high school, if you have a serious athlete, right, if they're trying to go D1, they have to start learning how to eat a proper way and minimizing, a lot of that crap that's in our bodies and stuff that's out there. And don't just do something because you can get away with it, right? We're looking for, I always tell my kids, right? I want you to look for the best decision, right? Not my way or your way or whatever you think you feel good, but what's the best way of doing things out there? And let's strive for that and I think Whole30 is a really good way of doing that. And like I said, my kids, especially my 15-year-old, is starting to see, and even my daughter who's 17 going to her senior year, she's realized, oh, I can cook like this and it's good and I feel better. I'm moving better because she's also has a gluten allergy. And
Mm.
so when she eats bad, she feels bad. And then she gets on this Whole30 type of mindset. She's like, oh, I feel way better. Not stuffy, you're not congested, just all those things. And you're like, man, okay, I'm gonna make this choice just to eat better because that's gonna allow me to be myself, to be fully present, fully there, fully impactful, right? And I think that's what you got to think about. How are you impacting people? I'm a true believer that we are not here for our own accord, but to serve other people. But we have to take care of ourselves so when we show up in these different spaces, we're able to do that at the best level possible. And the food is essential because it's our fuel. So I would say high school, and there may be some science to that or some other things why you just recommend it for college, but being a parent, being on it, I think it's really good for athletes to start learning how to eat properly and going through it. And so I would say, do it as a family,
Yeah.
right? And I think when you do those things together, it's much more it's received better because we're all doing this, and then we all get to see the benefits and how it shows up in our lives.
Yeah, involving the kids in the Whole30, having them help with meal planning, choosing recipes, cooking recipes, those are super important skills. I want to send my son into the world being fully self-sufficient, knowing how
Right.
to cook a meal, knowing how to grocery shop, not just living on like ramen and cereal when he gets to college like I did. We've talked a lot about the physical benefits of the Whole30 and sort of the physicality of the program, but I'm curious, did any of your Whole30 experiences help you address or even think about your relationship with food, your emotional relationship with food, maybe
Mm.
cravings, maybe habits? Is there any aspect of that that came into any of your programs?
I typically eat. I mean, it is if I have it, and this was probably more so when I played, but when I felt bad, I ate bad. Like, man, I just want a big pizza right now.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it allowed me to kind of understand, at least be aware of it. And it doesn't mean that you can't do it, right? But if it's like a chronic issue where you're eating like this every single time because this shows up, that may be something additional you want to address, right? To really understand it. And so uh, I would say, yes, I experienced that, but I didn't feel like it was a significant issue in that term because it typically was tied to football eating, and I was sore, eating bad, and I would get right back on the next day. It didn't turn into like this binge of me kind of falling off, which I
Hmm.
think sometimes that could be with people, especially if you're in a place of maybe a depression or a transition, right? And you allow yourself to get onto these binges of where you have this unhealthy relationship with food. So um, that I picked up on that, but I think this time around it wasn't as significant. I was just more aware of like some things I just naturally do that I didn't need to do. Like, for example, Starbucks or just being bored. So I'm gonna go get a coffee and put creamer in it, right? It was just more of that type of stuff, which I guess is similar. Like you just get bored or like I want that craving, let me go get it right now because I can.
Hmm.
This gave me an opportunity to kind of sit back, like, okay, I really don't need that, even though I want that. And so just kind of creating that discipline for myself, which even as a professional athlete, I have to remind myself, right? Those are like daily things that you have to continue to cultivate when you think about discipline and awareness and intentionality, which has become a little bit harder because it's no longer my profession. So I can
Sure.
actually look and be whatever I look like because I'm good, right? Versus my why then was like, hey, I want to go out and be able to perform with the highest level of people. So I've had to be more disciplined and more intentional. So that definitely pops up when I'm on Whole30, when sometimes I can kind of let myself kind of go with the wind, especially when I'm coaching and I'm running from practice to practice. You kind of let it get away from you a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, what you just talked about, though, really is that intentionality and making that connection. When I don't feel good physically, when I'm banged up or I'm tired, I reach for pizza or I reach for sugar or I reach for like comfort foods. When I'm bored, my first instinct is, can I eat something? I think those are really important associations that very often, you're right, people don't make because in their lives, they're just sort of doing it, they're living it, and maybe
Right.
even on autopilot with that. They don't have a professional athletic career or a coach or that, years of discipline to sort of pull them out of it. And I think even that association, especially for men who tend not to talk about their
Yeah.
emotional relationship with food or their
Right.
cravings, can be really powerful. Once you see it, you can't really unsee it. And then when that behavior pops up again, hopefully it prompts you to say, wait a minute, I recognize this pattern. I don't feel good. I'm craving pizza. Here are the other three things I could do instead that will actually make me feel better.
No, that's really good. And I would say from the man perspective versus the right females, because men typically don't see this as something they want to do, right? I actually encourage a couple of my friends to do it. And I mean, and I did Pilates, right? That for a long time, that was considered a women's thing, right?
Hmm.
It's not, right? We're just trying to build intentionality awareness of our bodies, right? And why wouldn't we want to be able to do that for us as men? And so I would just challenge all the men out there just to try it, see what it's like, right? Get a couple of buddies that you're tight with, right? That you may already share close things so that you can go through it together with it. If especially when you talk about the emotional piece, right? You got to be around people you trust. And when you're in those safe spaces, it's good, right? And so I had a couple of friends that I've encouraged to do it that are doing it, and we always talking. And when you're in relationship, it brings you closer too, like that too. So it's Whole30 has done a lot of cool things for me on the different levels. But for our men out there, it's definitely something worth doing. Understanding who you are, right? Being more intentional, more disciplined. That's definitely things that we want to model in our community to our families and really being a leader in like the health perspective, I think is would be really cool.
I think that's the perfect way to wrap up and end this video. I love when people say Whole30 had an impact on other areas of my life that I just didn't expect, right? You do this 30-day elimination program, you think it's going to impact physicality, your energy, your sleep. But then if you notice that it's improving your relationships or it's making you aware of emotional eating patterns or it's bringing you closer with your kids because you're involving them in the process, or you feel good about passing that knowledge along to your kids. I really do think the benefits can spill over into so many different areas, and you just spoke to so many of them.
No, well, appreciate you having me on, Melissa. It's been a pleasure. I'll be doing it again sometime soon. But yeah, it's been great.
So happy. Thank you so much, Lorenzo Alexander. Thanks for joining me today and talking about your Whole30 experience. I'm sure you're going to inspire a lot of people, especially athletes, to look more into the Whole30.